Hello and welcome piano enthusiasts. In this video I restore the inside and the outside of this unique, it's called a Symetrigrand by Mason and Hamlin. It's a baby grand, it's about 5 foot long, and yeah, they do spell it with one M, so yeah, and you don't have to worry about this one. I don't paint it black, so so that's, it's mahogany. That's what it looked like when it came in. Here's the movers picking it up from California. For this one's a restoration for a customer. A little over 2,000 miles to get it here. And here we're bringing it into, I call it the temporary workshop, because we're building a new mega piano shop on the new property. So we put the mini split and got heat and air conditioning, and I kind of poked a hole in the wall and put an exhaust fan, and so it works pretty well as a shop. It's just kind of tight quarters. So you'll see it in the video. Piano came apart pretty easy, a little tight getting the plate out. And I'll kind of pick up the video where I start on the pin block here. So I've got the big cast iron plate out of it, the large hunk of cast iron that holds all the tension of the strings. So now I'm just making a pattern for the new pin block. And if you don't know, you probably already do, watching these videos, but the pin block holds the tension. It holds on to the tuning pins, which holds the string. And after this piano's about 80 years old, so after that amount of time, it just becomes loose. It just can't hold the tune very well. And somebody super glued it in the past, and it's just time for a new one. So I've got my planer out. Probably use it maybe once every 3 years or something. And the final pass, you just want a real light cut, and you don't want any snipe at the end. And just checking the original measurement of the old one. So make sure it's the exact same width or height. And I'll cut it to length. And now I'll begin to fit the pin block. So it's got to fit real well into the cast iron frame. It can't do any wobbles, or it's got to be fit real snug. So I'll go back and forth from the plate and to the little grinder, and probably a couple dozen times. Just give it a little. See, I need to chamfer that edge a little bit more. Yeah, and these videos, I've said in the past, they're not intended to be a how-to video. But a lot of people say you're going too fast, so I'll slow this one down a little bit, and you can just jump through the parts you don't want to see. So I've got the that flange fitted pretty well. You can see chalk all along the flange, so don't have any bare spots. Now I'm just marking the holes for the Renner screw. So these are the screws that hold the pen block in, or the plate to the pen block. And you got to do a little clearance. You see the shape of the screw is tapered. So the top of the screw hole has to be a little bit wider than the bottom. And I'll just get all these screws in so I can get the tuning pen holes marked so I can drill those.
These dishes just aren't getting around.
And I'll put these in almost all the way. You'll see in a bit I tighten them the rest of the way by hand. I'm just using the drill for speed. But I didn't want to go all the way down because I didn't want to potentially over tighten them and strip out the screw holes. So. So yeah, now I got to get the angle at which I drill these holes. The tuning pins are put in at a little bit of an angle. And I've got this little table set up. It's a compound sliding table. You really don't have to do this, but I mean, it does take a little bit longer than just making a big wooden board and sliding it with your hand, and I don't know. I feel this is more secure. And now I'm just kind of sanding the edges. Just if a technician reaches their hand under there, I don't want them to get cut on a sharp edge. And I'll coat the pen block with a coat of shellac. And let that dry. Now I'll start on the keys, which I sent out for new keytops. Old ivories were pretty heavily worn. And you see how wobbly they are. You can hear a little bit. It's called chucking, where the keyhole in the middle of the key it's a little loose. So I'll replace these key bushings. Clean the old ones out. I count to about 6 seconds on each key and then move to the next. Just pull right out. rest of them. It takes about 45 minutes to take out all the key bushings on the center rail and the front rail. Now I'll get the measurement of the pins so I know what size bushing cloth to use. And these brass cauls, CAULS, that's what I'm putting in there. That's, I think I've got two, I've got a bag of 150 thousandths, and then maybe the other bag is 147 thousandths of an inch. So the front rail, you want a little clearance. I've been told between 2 to 5 thousandths of wiggle room. And the center rail, I've been told 0 to 2 thousandths of an inch of clearance. And so basically the opening or the hole should be just a tiny bit bigger than the pin itself that it's riding against. So you don't want it too tight or too loose. And they were way too loose, so it was impossible to control or play softly. Yeah, each key takes me about 20 seconds to put to do one key, one bushing. So, believe me, I count. I time myself on each key. It's like, how could I possibly make this faster? There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I mean, there's you can get this. It's called like a bushmaster, and it cuts the cloth, but yeah. I'm sure there's faster ways. So yeah, no, here's what the soundboard looks like. It's a little bit dirty. I've seen a lot worse. There's just a bunch of hairline cracks. And what I do, I'll dry the board first, so those cracks will open up a little bit. So. Which you don't want to do any soundboard repairs when the humidity is high, because if once you get done with it, and then the piano goes out, and then in the winter the humidity gets so low, and then there's a possibility for the soundboard to crack again. So you want to do the repairs with the humidity when it's low or the board is dry, and that way your repair material, whether you use a shim, wood shim or epoxy or whatever, once the humidity rises, then once the humidity is a normal range, that repair material is always under a state of compression, so it's not going to open up again. So, I do see a lot of wooden shims where the soundboard's been shimmed in the past, and it's opened up again. But if you don't know as a technician if that's improper shimming, like they didn't. Sometimes you can see it's obvious where they just didn't get they didn't route the board very cleanly, or fit it in there very well. But sometimes you can just tell that the board has just separated from the shim, and that could have been just from being in extremely dry climates, which isn't good for a piano to start. So I tell my customers, the perfect for a piano is about 45% humidity. Normal range would be between 30 and maybe 55%. And it really gets hard on the piano once you get below 25% humidity. And that's when you start to see soundboard cracks, whether it's a brand new soundboard or a 100-year-old soundboard. So yeah, now here I'm just cleaning up the cast iron plate, and I use this bronzing powder to color the lacquer. Just make sure that's mixed in good. Oh, and this is an upright plate. This is actually I'm doing for another technician. They want this. They had an old piano, but they couldn't take it with them. But they're going to hang it on the wall, and they're going to string it. They're going to put on a brand new set of $500 set of bass strings and hang it on the wall. So I thought that was funny. Yeah, so I try to do another plate in there, just make sure I get the color right. And so here's back to the Mason Hamlin. And you can see it's spelled with one M, Symetrigrand. And you can't really see the black isn't really coming up, but it looks good when it's done. It's not showing on camera, the black. Here it is. I think it's just the lighting. All right, now that the soundboard has been under a warm, I don't know, nap time. It's usually leave it for a day or two. I'll sand off the old finish. Sometimes it sands real easy and it's not very thick. Other times it is real thick, and you might get out a scraper, and a scraper will be faster. But in this case, it was just sanded off so quick. So. Yeah, and I think I've talked about it in one of my other videos. What do I use to shim a soundboard? And it's kind of a hot topic, but so I use an epoxy putty for the small cracks. If it's a large crack, I'll put a wood shim in. So here I'm just opening up the cracks just enough to get the filler material in the top. And I'll use an epoxy putty on the top and just kind of squeegee it in. And it doesn't go all the way through. It goes maybe a third of the way through. And once I get it in, I'll flip the piano upside down later and fill it with liquid epoxy to completely seal and fill the crack. And then once the board absorbs the moisture in the air, it'll kind of compress against that, and it should stay in a state of compression, so the board won't open again. Those cracks won't open up again. All right, now I'll flip the piano upside down. Being real conscious that the legs, those are kind of skinny legs, so, but with the plate out, it's not that heavy. But I do worry about those legs snapping or a glue joint breaking open or something. Put the Agraphs back in. So yeah, I cleaned up the Agraphs in a ultrasonic cleaner. And you see this one just needs to go a little bit more oops. And yeah, just never a good day when it goes from righty-tighty to righty-loosey. So unfortunately, this particular model, you can't just buy this size of Agraph anymore. I think it's a 9/16. So I had to go to a machine shop, and I actually broke off 3 of them of the same size. I can use the shims. There's little brass pieces you can put underneath, which I did on the other sizes where I needed. But I figured since I was already having to have that one made, they could make me 3 of them instead of 1 of them, in case I do break off another one. All right, now I'll put a sealer coat on the soundboard. And put the decal back on. It was a new decal. Put the plate back in. And the plate was real tight getting it out. So I was a little bit worried about boogering up the new finish. If I had refinished it before putting the plate in on those arms. So I just figured that the inside of the rim looked pretty good, so I figured I could just match the rest of the piano to the inside of the rim. Just spray a clear coat over that, and you really can't tell. Yeah, and one technician told me, well, you can use this sort of really fancy epoxy, marine grade epoxy. Just put the head of the Agraph, just like epoxy it in, those ones that broke. And I tried that at first, and then I came back the next day, and it had popped back out. So I'm glad that happened here and not, when the piano got back to California. So, yeah, luckily I was able to find a machine shop to duplicate those. Now I'll just clean up those rail pins. Shine them up, polish them, get all the tarnish off so they're not, so they don't add to the friction. And I'll just hit the tops of these keys with the laser just to clean the wood up a little bit. I could sandblast, but I don't have that. And it's messy. This is less messy. But really not that dirty. And here, instead of cleaning the head of each screw individually, I can before I take the old parts off, I'll just hit them with the laser and that'll shine them up pretty quick. This is the key upstop. So yeah, it's a bit cleaner. And polish up the cap stands. And now I'm just ordering the new parts, figuring out which style whippen and which flange, where the knuckles at, and I'll send those out to be the hammers, shanks, and flanges. I usually send those out to have another company bore and taper and cove and everything, the new hammers, and put them on the flanges, on the shanks. Now I'm just cleaning up the damper heads, getting the old felts off of them. Yeah, I mean, in this business, you can kind of pick your battles. Most piano rebuilders, they don't want anything to do with refinishing, and they'll send it out to be refinished and then do everything else. I usually send out the keys for new keytops. I don't have the jigs and things to do that, and to hang new hammers or drill the holes and everything at the right angles, and so that's a little bit beyond my skill level, and I'm sure I'll get into it one day. But you just kind of, like I said, pick your battles. I'm already, I've got 200 hours worth of footage on this. I don't need to make it 220 hours. I mean, maybe I do. I don't know. I'm sure there would be less, less worry about something not coming back right. And put on some new back rail cloth. And here I'm just seeing what size heel, which is that little bottom cushion on the whippen, I need. And I'll do one size for the white keys and a different size for the black keys. So W&G, which is Wessell, Nickel, and Gross, which is the company that supplies these carbon composite action parts. They sent me a little sheet on how to pick the right size heel. And usually the black key heel is 2 millimeters bigger, taller than the white key. So most pianos, they just compromise and just go a millimeter each way and have it all be 21 millimeters instead of 120 and the other 22. Okay, so now I'll take apart the bench. So the bench was a little wobbly, and the glue joints were all, glue is dried up. So I'll take that apart and take off the hinges and all these little buttons and nice little felts and leathers and yeah, I got this fancy laser that strips off the finish. And I got a lot of footage. Unfortunately, I set the tripod on top of the cart with the fan on it, so it was constantly bobbling around. And the thicker the finish, the laser it'll kind of lift it up from the surface, but it'll just sit there. So just a quick sanding gets rid of that. Saves me, I don't know, a couple $100 in stripper and lacquer thinner and steel wool and rags and just, that sort of headache, and, plastic covering that I like to put on the floor. And so the lasers, it's cleaner, even though it puts a whole bunch of smoke into the air. So I do wear my respirator and my goggles that blocks out the wavelength of the light, just in case that laser light were to be reflected back into my eye. I don't want an unplanned laser eye surgery. Getting into all those little 90-degree corners is a little bit harder. And now I'll start some repairs. There's just a few gouges and dents and some missing veneer here and there, but nothing too bad. You can see the bench is a little crooked. It's warped, I should say. That's how it came in, and I'm sure there's a way to fix that. But I'll put it in a steam box or something and worry about the veneer coming off. So I just left it. I had one piano a few years ago where the whole top lid was like that. It was warped. And I couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, some repairs I'll use just like this right here is I don't know what that is. It might be like a drywall compound, just a real light thing. And others I'll use a Bondo for wood where it needs to be, if it's in a high traffic area where it needs to be stronger, or like an epoxy putty. And I like to usually finish one piece and make sure I get the color right. So I'll do the bench top. Little chunk out of the bottom of the lyre. Yeah, some more dents on the side of the lid. That is kind of a high traffic. If the piano is going to get dented, it's going to be on the side of the lid because it's the thing you hit first. It's the thing you come in contact with first. And I probably should have used like a colored epoxy putty, and I wouldn't have had to work so hard to match the color. Especially that one on the top of the lid in that real exposed area. I think I did an okay job with it, but you can definitely see it. You know, you can see that it's been repaired. They're all smooth to the touch, so I mean, it's not like you run your finger over it and you can feel the repair. Yeah, I've just got a bunch of different sanders to help me with the profile. Little stick sanders. Forget what they have a name for those. I got those at Rockler. So now I'll spray some just a sealer coat on. Wait a little bit, spray another coat on. This will be a fully filled finish, so I'll spray enough coats and then sand back the pores so you won't feel the pores. I've heard it described as the writing test. If you can write on the top, like set a sheet of paper on the wood and then write on the piece of paper. And the color is a little bit different than. So anyway, the color that you see in that. But if you write on the sheet of paper and you get a smooth, like if it's real bumpy and it's hard to write, then the pores are, not filled. It's called open pore. And you can finish that way. It's a lot easier and cheaper, and it'll still look pretty good. But this is the whole shebang. So a piano finish is known for having closed pores. So I guess the best way to describe it is if you get your black piano refinished and you have a friend come over who saw your piano maybe 10 years ago, and they're coming over and they ask you, after you've got your piano refinished, they ask you, "Oh wow, when did you get your piano refinished? It looks great. It's beautiful." That might be an open pore finish, as opposed to if they come into your house and say, "Wow, when did you get a new piano?" That's probably a closed pore finish. And yeah, I tend to do these videos when I'm sick, so sorry I'm coughing. All right, now I'll sand the rest of that flush. I think this one I have to fill it a second time. Yep. And that was the first coat of top coat on the bottom of the bench. The bottom of the bench, that's not mahogany. I don't know what that is. Yeah, so I'll hang the boards that have two sides to them, just so I can spray both sides at the same time. Save me a little bit of time. I don't have to wait for one side to dry and then flip it over, spray the other side, and worry about uh, you know pad marks or something on the underside if I didn't wait long enough for it to dry, for the first side to dry. So now I'm just sanding between coats, which it's easy on the flat on the flat boards, but on the curved surfaces it's a little more work. You got to do it by hand or get fancy with your sanders. There was one in there where I was using the inline. Festool has an electric inline sander and different attachments for it. All right, so now that I've got all the finish sprayed on it, take the masking off, and it matched the color pretty well on the inner rim. You really can't tell that the inner rim wasn't refinished. It was just sprayed over with the new clear coat. So here's the brass hardware for the bottom of the legs, the ferrules, and the wheels. And the wheels themselves are brass, but uh, the frame around the wheels is steel. So I paint the frame brass color, and then I'll go and sand the wheel again and buff it up. So I've got the wheel will be shiny brass, polished. So I've got all the tarnish off with the first side, which is the deburring wheel, and then I polish off the marks made by that. And so it'll give me a high gloss on the brass. And this is a clear coat after I've cleaned the polish off. Yeah, those legs took it forever to sand. Just so many different profiles on them. You can see how it attaches to the piano for extra support and stability. That's really smart. I've got a similar piano in the shop right now. It's just for resale. It's Mason Hamlin had the Symetrigrand, and Story and Clark had one. They call it the Story Grand, with kind of a real fancy cabinet, and they have the same type of legs where there's a good chunk of the leg that extends above the bottom of the piano. Um, because when you make the legs that skinny, the piano just gets wobbly. So it just helps with support. Now I'll start the regulation process. Bed the keyframe, put that little paper in under there and screw the bolt down until it just catches on the paper. Then I take the paper out and just lower it little by little and keep knocking it until the knot goes away, and then just go a little bit further so you don't get any knocks or weird bounces in the keys when you're playing. And this one, a few pianos have this where you can just adjust the front. Most pianos, you got to get out your sandpaper and to do the front rail. But they just have little glide bolts that you can adjust up or down to get the perfect fit. lubricate those. This is a this is McLube 444, I think 440. They don't. You can't buy this anymore. Half the stuff. I mean, Pro Felt's gone. McLube. This stuff is gone. You got to get the, the next MacGyvered recipe of it that and hope it's similar. Just COVID knocked a whole bunch of people out. So, not that I'm saying that someone died. I'm just knocked a whole bunch of companies out. And level the keys. You can see what they look like before leveling. That black bar is just a straight level piece of aluminum. And now I'm actually just squaring the keys. I've noticed when I get new keytops from, I had to switch because my person I used to send them to retired, and so I found a new person, and the work's great. I just noticed there's a little bit of all the keys need to be just shifted to the left just a little bit. There's a slight downward slope, so maybe the jig's set up wrong. So usually I'll go 2 or 3 times with that black level, and then I'll do one more time by hand. Getting closer and closer. I'll do the white keys first, and then I'll do the black keys next. And now I'm doing them by hand. Just, 2000s here, 3000s there. If it's got original punchings, occasionally you can just move the original punching, just turn it like 45 degrees, and that'll add maybe a thousandth or two. So here's what it looks like after it's done. No gaps. And this little tool that I put on top of the black keys, that helps me see the black key height. And that's where it should be, and that's where it was. So black keys are pretty low. And let's see, I got the piano in June, maybe? End of May, June, something like that. And in July, there was a tuner that I'm friends with, and he just retired, and he's like, Jake, I don't have anybody to hand over my books to until you moved back. So so he handed me over his books, and so I sent out a mass flyer to all of his customers, and thankfully got an overwhelming response. They A lot of people who haven't had their piano tuned in 3 or 4 years, and then on top of the regulars. So I would work on the piano for a month, pretty good, and then I would go a long stretch of time, just doing tunings, and sometimes it works out because you can't really do anything, just waiting on finish to dry. But so I probably went with, let's see, after I needed the Agraph, I waited about 6 weeks to get that made to string the rest of the piano. And so I didn't work on the piano for about 6 weeks, and then I kept going on it, and then and then the November picked up all the tunings, and for sale pianos, a lot of people wanting to purchase pianos. So, but eventually Eventually, I started just scheduling myself in the shop because I was realizing that the time wasn't going to make itself for this piano. So, and when it's a customer's piano and they've paid you deposits, and you don't want it to just sit there forever. So, I've heard of if there's one, I've heard some stories of pianos taking years and years. There's one company here in town where, well, he's passed now, but his reputation was expect your piano to be there for at least 3 years. I think he had one piano for 7 years, and there was a big blow-up fight. But they do great work. Then there's another guy in Cincinnati who just I get calls probably every other month. It's like, Jake, this piano was sent to so-and-so, and it's been sitting there for 2 years, and they're looking for somebody else to do it. Or to finish it. And jumping in the middle of a project is, as you can imagine, much harder than just starting it from scratch and, developing a game plan for everything. So the new components, the new action parts, are a slightly different profile, and they do that for strength and weighting. So I have to make a little bit of a clearance in this rail, in the action rail. So I just take it off and sand it a bit. Make sure you see I marked it, make sure I got it back in the right spot. And here I'm, sanding. This is the top coat, and with any, faux space to spray finish, you get bugs, and you get I didn't wear a hairnet, but I, noticing a couple of my hairs in the finish. And, the bugs just, they find their way. So you got to sand it and respray it. And you see that spot on the top where I repaired that. Tried to draw in the grain lines and make it look real fancy. So here I'm gluing on the repetition heels. Just a little bit of super glue, and you wait. You just hold it there for about 10-12 seconds. It cures pretty fast. The material is actually a little bit porous, so it absorbs just a little bit of the glue. It's not like, I guess, a regular plastic where or silicone where it doesn't absorb any glue. These are the new hammer shanks and flanges. Went with the German Renner blue points. I've used these hammers. I love these hammers. I've used these hammers on a lot of pianos, and I've used the obels a lot, and those are good too. But I would say they're just inconsistent from set to set, voicing wise. And like some of them will come in so hard that I'll have to just keep voicing down and needling and needling and needling just in the middle, and then the bass will be just so fluffy, and then I'll have to voice those up. And I would say 1/3 out of the obel sets I get, I don't have to do much, and those are, I mean, I can make them sound good regardless of how they come in. But with the Renners, and I get them pre-voiced, so I know exactly what to expect, and there's usually very little to do. And with the pre-voicing, they also so after the hammers are cut, it leaves kind of a cupping in the hammer felt, so they actually sand that off, which is nice. They just group them all together and sand them with a big sheet sander. So yeah, I mean, I've used the Renners on, let's see, 9-foot Baldwins. What was the last set I used on? Oh yeah, the Schiedmeyer that I have, the 7'3". That's a beast. So yeah, you notice I guess don't buy $100 camera off of Amazon because it won't be able to focus on anything, because I was having problems with the iPad that I normally record with, connecting it to the computer. My normal software went out of date or something, and I was losing that first. I've lost footage. I've taken the piano apart because I thought I had it, and it didn't transfer over to the computer, and yeah. Anyway, so yeah, now I'm just setting a preliminary hammer blow distance, let off, drop, just getting everything within range so it can be regulated. And a lot of people have, these. You can buy a nice bench top regulation, do everything on the bench top for $3,000. I have these 2 sticks in a string, and it works. There's really no reason to get fancy with it. Really, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, your final pass should be in the piano. Yeah, up in northern Indiana, where I just moved from, I did a little work for Walter Piano, the Charles Walter Piano Company, and Walter Piano Transport, Piano Market Plus. There's 3 different names, but they also restore pianos, 100-year-old Steinways and Mason Hamlins, everything. And Yeah, it was a great experience, and I kind of worked there as just a couple days a week. And yeah, they would. I mean, I learned a lot there, and they would level the keys on a bench though, which I thought was a little. I mean, I guess that's how you do it in the factory, but I would get done leveling a set of keys because I said, shouldn't we do this in the piano? And I would get it back in the piano, and it would be, it would be off. So I would have to redo it in the piano. So eventually, I just, if the if the boss wasn't there, I was just leveling the keys in the piano instead of having to redo it. Now I'm just setting the repetition spring strength. That one's pretty good. That one's real slow. Weak, I should say. Just a little slow. You see how it's coming up. Just a little bit slow, so yeah. If it's too tight, if the spring is the tension is too tight, then it'll bounce up so high and it'll hit the string. It'll hit the string again, and you'll get a double strike, unintentional. But if it's too weak, then it just won't work right. So now I'll put the new damper felts on. Yeah, I just cleaned up the damper heads and sprayed a clear coat over them, gives them a little shine. Guess I could have sped this up a little bit more. Oh, this one was different because the sostenuto, it didn't go all the way through on the other side of the those high notes in the treble. So yeah, it stopped before those 5 or 6 notes in the treble, which is kind of strange. The sostenuto is the middle pedal. And I played it a little bit and noticed a few things. Noticed the weighting is a little bit light. Maybe the hammers are a little bit lighter than the originals. The aftertouch, there wasn't enough aftertouch. So I'll fix those things later. Now I'm getting the damper timing. I'll set the key timing first. Like I'll do some guides. And the rail is a little bit warped, so I have to do some adjustments. So now I'm just pressing the key down a little bit and seeing where the damper lifts in the keystroke. And I'll do some adjustments. Use that little tool to measure the back of the key, the height. set that. And I'll tighten the screws, and just need to make sure the dampers lift straight up and down. You can see they're a little... When you tighten the screw, it can put a bend on the wire. So. And just checking the timing again. And I got to touch up one section. And before I put the pedal wire back on, I'll replace all the felts and leathers and just clean up all the trap work underneath the piano. See those case parts in the back just drying. When I spray the top coat, I'll lay them flat. Make sure the top coat lays out nice and flat. I won't try to spray both sides at the same time. You end up getting weird overspray, and it's just harder to get the perfect finish. Usually I do this when the piano's upside down. But for whatever reason, I didn't have the space or the time to do it that day. So, well, usually it takes either a day or maybe a day and a half. I haven't put the decal on the fallboard yet. Most of my time spent at Walter was, not most of my time, but probably a third maybe, was doing dampers, sostenuto, and doing this trap work. Just on the floor. But somebody's got to do it. Now I'll shine up these pedals. sometimes it's just easier by hand. So I did the one and was like, well, just might be quicker by hand actually. To get her a better result. And the pedals, they should be pretty snug. Shouldn't be any left to right movement. They shouldn't be flopping around. And I try to match the thickness of the original felts because they were all there. Sometimes they're missing and you gotta figure it out. Because occasionally on some pianos you'll put the same size felts in, but the middle pedal will be higher than the other two pedals. So you gotta, adjust it. You put a thicker felt in the back of the middle pedal and it brings it down a little bit. And I like to use the key bushing cloth for the pedal rods to slide in there because it has that white center in the cloth that's real durable. So it's not going to wear away in 10 years. I've developed a technique to just roll those up and put them in and then twist them so the line is up at noon. Just make it look like a professional did it. Up at 12 o'clock and one's not at 3 o'clock and the other at 6 o'clock, and kind of like tuning pen beckets. Polish up those pedal rods. And you don't want any finish on the pedal rod where it goes through that bushing, because eventually it'll wear away and it'll start to squeak. And I don't have the support rods in there yet. Now I'm doing the pedal timing for the dampers. You can see the ones that are early there on the right, lifting up before the other ones. Tune it up again. I'll usually put a couple tunings on it just to get the strings up to tension before putting the dampers on. I've noticed that helps, especially in the trichords. So now I'll replace that little felt in that sostenuto bar there. Now I'm checking the height of the damper upstop rail. Feeling it. And I'm saying I don't like that. It needs more aftertouch. So you can do that by either increasing the key dip, how far the key travels downward, or decreasing the hammer blow distance, putting the hammer closer to the string. So it doesn't have to travel as far to hit the string. Yeah, you see that can is just just dripping lacquer. Those nozzles are so cheap. So I decided to put brass little lid prop holders because they look a bit more classy than the wooden ones. So I'll fill that hole and poke a new hole for the screw and screw those on. Hinges back on the lid props, polishing those. Screw that back in. Make sure the button hits the plate, a little rubber button. And for these, those holes on the bottom of the lid, where I would normally put a rubber bumper, I don't like to put rubber where it hits the finish and it stays on the finish for long periods of time because it will disintegrate. And the biggest, Baldwins do that, Charles Walters do that, where the rubber button will be, especially on the benches. Have you ever, I've had so many times where I'll go to a customer, a tuning, with, say, a Charles Walter piano, and the bench, it doesn't open. And I asked them about it. It's like, have you ever opened your bench? It seems really hard to open. They said, oh, no, it doesn't open. And then, I look at it. It's like, no, it opens. It's got a hinge on it. So I just pry it open, and the rubber just melts onto the lacquer. So, I just put that pre-compressed felt in there. Glued little, use the hole punch to glue those in so they're the perfect size. Of course, there used to be some fancy way to cover those with leather and glue those in, but I don't know what that is. I think they used to do that old 100-year-old Steinways. And I'll polish up the long hinge. You can see on my phone there, I took measurements before I stripped the old one off. That's a transfer decal. It's just a really thin vinyl decal. And in a bit I'll spray another clear coat over that. Put all the screws back in. The hinge. And just putting case parts back together at this point. All the case felt. Little bumpers. The hard bumpers don't seem to migrate onto the lacquer. It's the big soft ones that will just turn to goo over a few years. And I'll turn my attention to the weighting. So they're a little bit light. I'm marking each one by how many grams light it is. And I'm going through and do the white keys because they're kind of similar, and then I'll go through and do the black keys because those are all similar. So most of them are in this section. I think it was between 6 and 12 grams light on the white keys. And I forget the black keys. But yeah, I asked them, do you want a heavy piano? Do you want a light piano? Middle of the road, and they just went with middle of the road, which is about 48 grams, 50 grams in the middle. And maybe 52 in the bass, 48, 46 in the high treble. That's what I tend to do. When someone goes from a worn-out piano to a well-working, well-regulated piano, they'll often say, and especially if they're elderly, they'll say it's too heavy. So even if you do everything right, quote unquote right, you have to be thinking about who you're doing the work for. And if it were an elderly person, I probably would have made it a little bit lighter. Because I do get, I'm in the field a lot now, and I do hear a lot of, well, I used to play, but now it hurts my hands. And so it's kind of sad to hear that. hear I don't play as much. You know, I can only play for a few minutes at a time, or and when somebody upgrades from a worn out, Wurlitzer Spinet to to a nice, Yamaha or Studio or something, it's like, wow, that's really heavy. And I'm thinking in my mind, it's like, actually, Yamaha is kind of on the lighter side compared to some of them. Even just going from not playing, now that I've got two kids, I don't have much time to practice. So when I do have a time to sit down and play for an hour, my muscles are like feeling it. It's like, wow, I'm out of shape. So yeah, I'm regluing this bench back together and filling these holes where I took the lead weights out of. And I learned on one of those other videos, you don't fill it all at once because it will seep through the glue, or seep through the glue of the tape, and you'll end up with a big mess, which I had to spend 3 hours sanding. So I just put a few drops at the bottom and let that cure, and then fill it the rest of the way. Yeah, sometimes, like if it's just a piano for resale, like if it's an upright, in decent shape, I'm not doing a whole rebuild or something. There are occasions where I'll spend more time on the bench than I do on the piano. Busting it apart and fixing this and making a new, piece of wood that chunked out, or gluing for new dowels. And this one wasn't that bad. Yeah, put those shiny ferrules on the bottom. They sparkle. Yeah, this one's kind of strange because it's glued together, but it also has the metal brackets. I don't see that very often where it's got both. So I'm almost thinking that someone added those metal brackets later. Or maybe not. Maybe they were there originally. So I took out the lead weights in the front of the key, so the front of the key wasn't as heavy, so that made it seem heavier, on the back of the key. And actually that helps with repetition, because if the front of the key is heavier, then you have to move more mass to return the key back to starting position. And over the years, I've gotten a pretty good sense of which lead weight to remove, and which position to get the weight right. Now I'm just checking if the hammers are mated to the strings. So I've got the dampers up, and I'm just lifting the hammer gently on the strings. And if they're not mated well, you'll hear you'll hear click click ding, or ding ding click. And these were great right out of the box. So yeah, and that's what you hear with with the audio from that $100 Amazon camera. So I don't yeah, so I don't record too much audio with that. So I so now I'm just doing some, what do they call this, sugar needling, I forget. There's a term for it. Just where the needle goes in like a millimeter or two in the top of the felt. Because when they pre-voice, they'll do the shoulders real heavy, and they'll go in with pretty long needles. And I'm just noticing the middle. I want it to be a little bit more warm. And I asked them, do they want it more, do you want it more bright? Do you want it articulate? Do you want it mellow, soft? And they prefer more of a mellow sound. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you play and what your preference is. And the space, the space that the piano's going in. If it's going into a real small room, it's going to sound bigger. You might voice it a little softer. So I'm just doing a lot of playing. Seeing what I notice, and making sure the tuning's real good when I'm doing the voicing. I'm putting the lyre sticks back in and just lubricating all the pedals. And oh yeah, so Mason and Hamlin, they and I learned this when I did that Mason Hamlin A in another video I did a couple years ago. They kind of experimented with different strike points in the bass. So this one, the first 13, 14 or so notes, the strike point of the bass, the Agraphs are at a different spot than the rest of the bass. Normally it's just all in a straight line. So that made the first few notes sound kind of soft. So I'm voicing that up with some. It's called B72. It's I guess it's an art conservation. It's supposed to, like, if a painting or some work of art gets ripped, that this is after it's been carefully repainted or restored. They'll put this on the top because it's supposed to be completely clear and not any yellowing. So I mean, it's kind of like a lacquer or a shellac. So to get more little oomph, I guess, or fundamental, I'll put the hammers on the side and apply it on the side of the hammer to get kind of deep inside, and then that wasn't enough. So if I want it to be more articulate, then I'll start putting the whatever I'm using, the B72 or the lacquer or the shellac, depending on what I have on hand. I'll put it on the shoulders and maybe on the top in a real dilute solution. So there's you got to think of, like, not only is there, you want it more crisp, but just because it's more articulate isn't going to give you more tone. So that's why I do the sides of the hammers. And you got to make sure you don't get where the glue joint, where it's glued to the wood. And now I'll just stage it and put it back together. Looks gorgeous. And my wife will come in and do a recording. And this audio is from her phone. In a second I'll set up the microphones. Yeah, the kids are out waiting in the car, so just gotta be quick. She just got home, so hey, come here, record this real quick. This is recorded with the microphones. This is a piece by Albanese, Isaac or Isaac Albanese. It's called La Vega, the Alhambra suite. I used to play the whole thing. I've got a recording. I'll link the YouTube video. Unfortunately, that recording's a little bit hard to listen to because it's just recorded with the iPad. Yeah. The old shop was very bare, and it had drywall, and all the sound came back to the microphone, and it just made it sound very harsh. This one I'm relearning, the Brahms. It would be a good one to get back under the fingers. This was actually the second classical piece I learned after Fiorelli's. Took me, a year to learn it or something, because I had no idea what any of these chords or chord progressions are. Just learning the notes one by one. So still a little bit under tempo. Microphones, I've got them close to the strings. It makes it sound a little more crisp than what I hear in person. That's why I wanted to let you hear a little bit of the phone audio. before I had any idea about classical music, there was a program that you downloaded off of, I think, sheetmusicplus.com or one of those. And this was an example piece. So I kind of listened to it over and over again. It's like, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and it's a little confusing because it's like, it's marked in 6/8, but it should almost be marked in 12/16. Like, so here's 4 beats to the bar. That would be 12/16. So it's kind of a cool piece. Continue my fascination with F sharp minor. And the piano is just real easy to control. It's real consistent, easy to play soft. Yeah, you want that difference between melodic play and accompaniment play. So you hear the accompaniment and those offbeats are kind of right in the same register as the melody. So not only difference in volume, but when you play softer, it should sound less articulate. I've turned the heat off so I don't get that fan noise in the recording. It's been probably an hour and a half at this point because I did a pretty lengthy warm-up. You can start to hear some unisons going out just a little bit. I've got a dehumidifier too that I turned off right behind it. Yeah, that D sharp is, is the biggest offender. Yeah, I'm liking Albanese more and more. Like, a lot of this stuff is kind of, it's good for a guy like me who doesn't have time to sit down and practice every day. I can play this piece, for example, which is 2 minutes and 30 seconds long from start to finish, and you know it's important for anybody, any pianist, I guess, to play something from start to finish. I guess for their, you know, sense of accomplishment, or like, I mean, it's a beautiful work and it's not that hard, you know, it's interesting harmonically. I played this in, you know, high school and college, so my muscle memory still remembers it. And sometimes I can play well enough to make it sound like I've been practicing it. By this point, it's cold in the shop. It gets pretty cold when you turn the heat off. Pretty cold pretty fast. So we'll get the new shop built and I'll be set. Yeah, D sharp. Or here it's an E flat. No, it's a D sharp. Yeah, we tried to look for a house with a giant pole barn already built, but couldn't find one, so. But at least we know we're staying, so we don't mind investing in a proper shop, I should say. So there's, they just delivered the trusses, and that's before. It's probably in August or something, maybe September. So it'll be a pretty big place. Thanks for watching.